The show ended in 1974. By 2017, one of them was dying in a hospital. He told everyone he had dementia. Then, weeks before his death, he admitted the truth. There was no dementia. It was alcohol poisoning and years of lies. Another cast member developed feelings for her TV brother. When he rejected her and wrote about their one night together in his book, she never spoke to him again. Not even when he was dying. Today, some of them disappeared completely. Others rebuilt their lives in ways no one expected. This is what really happened after the cameras stopped rolling. David Cassidy. David Cassidy was best known as Keith Partridge from the Partridge family, but his life was much more complicated than a smiling teen idol on a lunchbox. He was born on April 12, 1950, in New York City, and from the beginning, there was a gap between what the world saw and what he felt. His parents divorced when he was only 5. Instead of growing up in a cozy Hollywood home, he was raised mostly by his grandparents. His father was the actor Jack Cassidy. His stepmother was Shirley Jones, who later played his mother on television. It looked like a perfect show business family from the outside, but David barely saw them. Years later, he said that he did not even learn about his parents' divorce from his own family. A neighbor told him. That moment stayed with him. It set the tone for a life where millions of strangers knew his face, while the people closest to him often felt far away. When the Partridge Family premiered in 1970, everything changed in an instant. David went from being a struggling young actor to a global star almost overnight. Teen magazines put his picture on every cover. Concerts sold out in minutes. Stadiums filled with screaming fans. At one point, he received more fan mail than Elvis Presley or the Beatles. For a while, he was called the highest-paid entertainer in the world. Yet the attention did not feel like love to him. It felt like pressure. Cameras followed him everywhere. His managers wanted him to stay sweet and clean-cut. But inside, he felt restless and trapped. In 1972, he tried to crack that perfect image. He posed nude for Rolling Stone. The article that went with the photos did not show a safe, polished TV star. It showed a young man who admitted he was often stoned and drunk in New York, trying to escape the box his fame had built around him. Fans were shocked. Parents were upset. But for David, it was a way to scream that he was more than a poster on a bedroom wall. The cost of fame showed up in other ways too. In 1974, at a London concert, a teenage girl in the crowd was crushed in a stampede and died. Dozens of other fans were hurt. The tragedy haunted him. He left the Partridge Family that same year and tried to reset his life and career. He still made records, he still acted, he still toured. But the smooth path people expected never really came. As the years passed, his problems became harder to hide. Money slipped away. Roles were harder to get. Between 2010 and 2014, he was arrested 3 times for drunk driving. Each arrest pulled his private battle with alcohol into the headlines. He went to rehab and tried to start again. In 2015, he filed for bankruptcy. The boy who had once been showered with money, gifts, and attention was now telling a court that he could not pay his bills. His final chapter was the most painful and confusing. In 2017, he announced that he was suffering from dementia. Fans felt sorry for him and believed this was the explanation for his slurred speech and strange behavior on stage. Then, just weeks before he died, he sat down for a documentary interview and told a different truth. He said there was no sign of dementia. He said his collapse came from alcohol poisoning and years of heavy drinking. He admitted that he had lied about his drinking and about his health. The organs in his body could not keep going. He was hospitalized with liver and kidney failure and placed in a medically induced coma. On November 21st, 2017, David Cassidy died at the age of 67. His daughter later shared his last words. He said, "So much wasted time." For someone who had once seemed to have everything, those words cut deep. His story became a reminder that fame can hide loneliness, addiction, and regret, and that even the brightest lights on stage can belong to someone who feels completely lost when the crowd goes home. Shirley Jones. Shirley Jones was known to millions as the warm, smiling mother on the Partridge Family. Viewers saw her driving the colorful bus, singing wholesome songs with her kids, and holding the family together. Her real life, though, stretched far beyond that cheerful image. She was born on March 31, 1934, in Charleroi, Pennsylvania, and by her late teens, she was already chasing big dreams. At 19, she was on Broadway. Soon after, she was starring in major film musicals: Oklahoma in 1955, Carousel in 1956, The Music Man in 1962. Audiences saw her as the perfect good girl. Then, in 1961, she shocked people by winning an Academy Award for Elmer Gantry, playing a woman who had become a prostitute. The role did not match the innocent image people had built in their heads, but it showed what she already knew. She was not just a sweet face. She was an actress who could go dark and complicated when the story needed it. Her personal life had its own storms. In 1956, she married Jack Cassidy. Together, they built a blended acting family. Their home included her children with Jack, as well as Jack's son David from a previous relationship. To the outside world, it looked like a talented, glamorous household. Inside, things were rougher. Jack struggled with infidelity and jealousy. As David's fame exploded on the Partridge Family in the early 1970s, Jack's pride was bruised. Shirley later said that his jealousy over David's success poisoned the air in their house. The tension pulled at their marriage until it finally broke. They divorced in 1975. The next year, tragedy struck. In 1976, Jack Cassidy died in a house fire. The loss hit Shirley hard. It hurt her sons even more. They were dealing with fame, pressure, and now sudden grief. For Shirley, the cheerful TV mother role must have felt heavier in those years because she was playing stability on camera while trying to hold her own family together off-screen. In 1977, she married comedian Marty Ingalls. Their relationship lasted nearly 40 years, which is a lifetime in Hollywood. It was not simple. Marty's offbeat personality, his health issues, and especially his later dementia, brought fresh challenges, along with financial stress as they aged. Still, they stayed together until his death in 2015. Shirley kept working, kept showing up, kept saying yes to new roles on television, in movies, and on stage. By 2025, at 91 years old, she continued to appear in public and talk openly about what she had lived through. Fans still remembered Shirley Partridge, the gentle mother on the bus. Yet the woman behind that role had survived broken marriages, jealousy, grief, aging in a tough industry, and the long shadow of fame. Her life carried both glitter and scars, and her honesty about it turned her from a simple TV mom into a symbol of quiet strength. Susan Day played Laurie Partridge, the smart, serious older sister on the Partridge Family. On screen, she seemed calm, confident, and composed. Off-screen, she was much younger and more fragile than people realized. She was born on December 10, 1952, in Pekin, Illinois. In 1970, she was only 17 years old, with no acting experience when she landed the role that would change her life. One day, she was a teenager. The next day, she was a television star. The cameras loved her, but fame came with a hidden price. As the show grew more popular, Susan became more self-conscious about her body. She slipped into a severe eating disorder. By the time she was 19, reports said she weighed less than many 12-year-olds. fans saw a thin, beautiful girl on screen, they did not see the pain, the hunger, the constant pressure to stay small. Those years left marks on her body and her mind that did not disappear when the series ended. Her emotional life on set was tangled too. She developed deep feelings for David Cassidy, the show's leading heartthrob who played her older brother on screen. For her, it was real. For him, it was not. In his 1994 memoir, he wrote that he did not share her feelings and admitted that they slept together only once. His words cut her deeply. It felt like a betrayal, especially because he spoke about it so openly with the world. The hurt ran so deep that she never spoke to him again. She stayed away from cast reunions. She did not reach out, even near the end of his life in 2017. The warm sibling bond fans imagined between Laurie and Keith Partridge did not exist in real life anymore. When the Partridge family ended in 1974, many assumed her career would fade. Instead, she rebuilt herself as a serious actress. In 1986, she took on the role of Grace Van Owen on the legal drama L.A. Law. That character was strong, sharp, and complicated, and Susan brought all her experience and discipline to the part. She won a Golden Globe in 1987 and earned 6 Emmy nominations during the show's run from 1986 to 1992. It was proof that she was far more than a former teen star. She had range. She had staying power. Her life outside Hollywood slowly turned in a different direction. In 2000, she joined the board of the UCLA Rape Treatment Center. She saw how much damage violence could do and used her name to help. In 2002, she co-produced a documentary about campus rape, shining light on stories many people wanted to ignore. As the years passed, she stepped further away from the spotlight. She chose to live quietly in upstate New York. By 2025, even though she made headlines for sharing some of her ongoing health struggles, she kept most details private. People still estimate her net worth at around $10 million, which is remarkable for someone whose fame peaked in the 1970s and who then walked away from the constant chase for attention. Her story shows how someone can survive the intense heat of early fame, carry deep private wounds, fight for important causes, and finally choose a calm, private life on her own terms. Danny Bonaduce. Danny Bonaduce played Danny Partridge on The Partridge Family, the sharp, mischievous, red-headed kid who always seemed to have a scheme ready. Viewers saw a funny child star with quick lines and great timing. His real childhood, though, was anything but simple and playful. He was born on August 13, 1959, in Broomall, Pennsylvania, and started acting young. By age 10, he was already part of a hit series. His father worked as a television writer and once told him that acting was one step below pimping. That cruel line showed how little respect there was at home for the thing that made Danny famous. It planted confusion in his mind. The world loved what he did, but his own father treated it like something dirty. After the Partridge family ended, Danny's life began to tilt into darker territory. Drugs, unstable work, and bad decisions followed him into adulthood. At times he was homeless and living out of his car. He was arrested more than once. The charming kid on television grew into a man who kept crashing into trouble. One of the most shocking events in his life took place in 1991, when he was a radio DJ in Phoenix. He picked up a transgender prostitute named Darius Barney for oral sex, paying $20. When he realized Barney was a man, the situation turned violent. He demanded his money back, then attacked Barney so badly that Barney needed reconstructive surgery. Danny fled, but police later found him hiding naked in a closet in his condo. He was charged with felony flight, aggravated assault, and strong armed robbery. He had to pay Barney's medical bills as part of his sentence. The story damaged his reputation for years and marked him as a dangerous, out-of-control figure. His private life stayed turbulent. He kept fighting addiction through the 1980s and 1990s. He drifted between small jobs and small comebacks, but the pull of drugs and alcohol was strong. In 2006, the reality show Breaking Bonaduce put his chaos on full display. Cameras followed him into therapy sessions, marital fights, and breakdowns. Viewers watched him drink, rage, and spiral. In one of the most disturbing moments, he attempted suicide on camera after his wife Gretchen said she wanted a divorce. The show made ratings, but it also left a disturbing record of a man who was falling apart in public. Even in recent years, the struggles did not stop. In June 2023, he announced that he would have surgery for hydrocephalus, a condition that affects the brain and can destroy balance and movement. For a long time, doctors had misread his symptoms. At first, people worried he had dementia. He had trouble walking. His speech and balance were off. It turned out that fluid in his brain was the cause. The condition grew serious enough that he had to retire from radio in December 2023, ending a career that had given him stability after so much chaos. Dave Madden, who so many people remember as Reuben Kincaid on the Partridge Family, lived a life full of quiet surprises long before he ever worried about a bus full of singing kids. He was born in Sarnia, Ontario, Canada, on December 17, 1931, then moved to Terre Haute, Indiana, where his path started shifting from ordinary to strange and interesting. As a young man, he served in the U.S. Air Force, and while stationed in North Africa, he did something most actors can only dream about later in life. He performed a magic act for King Idris of Libya. One moment, he was just another serviceman overseas. The next, he was standing in front of royalty, pulling off tricks under hot lights in a foreign palace. When he came back home, he did not jump straight into stardom. Instead, he went to the University of Miami and earned a degree in radio and television in 1959. That decision quietly set the course for everything that followed. With a diploma in his hand and a sense of timing he had been sharpening for years, he stepped into the entertainment world. His first big national exposure came on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, where he carved out this odd little niche for himself. He drank milk on camera, threw confetti, and played the sad sack who looked like the joke was always on him. It was strange, offbeat, and very memorable. People did not always know his name yet, but they knew that face. Then 1970 arrived, and with it, the role that would follow him for the rest of his life. He was cast as Reuben Kincaid, the slightly frazzled, always frustrated manager of the Partridge Family. On screen, Reuben was forever rolling his eyes at the kids, especially Danny Bonaduce's character, and trying to hold the band together while everything around him fell apart. Dave's timing, the way he could be both annoyed and affectionate in the same breath, made the character feel real. Viewers at home believed that beneath the sighs and complaints, Reuben cared about that family. That warmth was not an act. Behind the scenes, Dave Madden proved it. Danny Bonaduce was living through serious abuse at home during those years, and while Hollywood looked glittery on camera, his real life was anything but. Dave saw it. Instead of just staying in his lane as a co-star, he stepped in and opened his home. He let Danny stay with him, giving him a safe place when things at home became unbearable. Danny would later talk about those nights and the parties at Madden's house, remembering how he would sneak drinks when the grown-ups were not looking. But underneath the mischief was something much deeper. Dave Madden had given a scared kid a place where he could sleep without fear. After the Partridge Family ended in 1974, the world did not stop calling. Madden moved into other projects, playing Earl Hicks, a regular diner customer on the sitcom Alice, and popping up on shows like The Love Boat and Fantasy Island. He kept working steadily, not as a screaming superstar, but as the kind of familiar character actor people felt like they knew. Later, he even lent his voice to video games and narrated television series, showing that his skills reached far beyond one grumpy manager with a briefcase. Suzanne Crowe. Suzanne Crowe, who played Tracy Partridge, seemed at first like the shy little girl at the edge of the stage, clutching a tambourine. In reality, her life was already moving at a fast pace, when most kids were just learning their multiplication tables. She was born on January 6, 1963, in Fullerton, California, and she grew up as the youngest of 8 siblings, which meant she knew about noise, crowds, and competition long before she ever walked into a casting office. At just 7 years old, she auditioned for the Partridge Family. The producers did not hand her the part on the first try. She went through 3 callbacks and 4 interviews, each one another test for this small girl with big eyes and a tambourine. Eventually, she landed the role of Tracy, the youngest Partridge, and once she stepped into that bus, she stayed. From 1970 to 1974, she appeared in all 96 episodes of the show. She even voiced Tracy in the animated spin-off Partridge Family 2200 AD, proving that her character did not stop singing just because the live-action cameras were turned off. Life on set looked fun, but it was also school, work, and pressure all mixed together. Suzanne attended school with co-stars Danny Bonaduce and Brian Forster between takes, then went right back to work under the lights. During that period, she filmed around 30 commercials, so even when she was not with the Partridge clan, she was still in front of the camera. She once auditioned for a role in the Western film Shootout with Gregory Peck, a chance that could have changed her path. But the producers of the Partridge Family would not let her leave the series. The part went to someone else, and Suzanne stayed on the bus. When the show ended, the world did not rush to give her another long-running role. She made a few guest appearances on television in the 1970s and starred in the 1980 TV movie Children of Divorce, which would become her last credited on-screen role. Real life slowly pulled her away from acting. In 1985, she married William Condrey and later had 2 daughters. Instead of chasing auditions, she opened a bookstore, a small, grounded business that she ran until 1993. After the bookstore closed, she moved into a more ordinary job, managing an Office Max store. Even with this quiet life, the idea of acting never fully left her. In the 2000s, she considered returning to the screen and even signed a contract with VH1 for a new Partridge Family project. The project never got off the ground, so rather than step back into the spotlight, she continued living a private life, rarely appearing in public except for occasional cast reunions. Fans who saw her at those events often remarked how little she seemed changed, the same Tracy smile now resting on an adult face. Brian Forster. Brian Forster, remembered by millions as Christopher "Chris" Partridge, stepped into the Partridge Family almost by accident, but the way his life unfolded after the show was anything but accidental. He was born on April 14, 1960, in Los Angeles, into a family where acting was not a fantasy, but a normal job. His mother came from an acting background and saw commercials as a way to build a future. She put Brian in front of the camera not to make him famous, but to help pay for college one day. By the time he turned 10, Brian had already appeared in 21 commercials, including spots for United Airlines and Texaco. When the casting call went out to replace the original Chris Partridge, Brian's name entered the mix. Unlike many Hollywood stories that involve endless auditions and sleepless nights, his entry was strangely simple. He went to one interview, There were no second auditions and no callbacks. The producers took one look at him and decided he was Chris. In 1971, at just 11 years old, he stepped onto the set as the new drummer of the Partridge Band. From then until the show ended in 1974, he appeared in 71 episodes, beating time on the drums while cameras rolled and fans fell in love with the family. What many people do not know is that behind those scenes, he developed a close friendship with Suzanne Crowe. They shared a trailer, rode bikes together, and he even had a childhood crush on her. A crush Suzanne always denied with a smile. Most child actors struggle with what comes next, once the cameras stop. Brian took a different road. Instead of chasing roles or spiraling into scandal, he walked away from Hollywood almost completely. He moved to Northern California and became a race car driver, competing in historic Formula Ford single-seaters. On the track, he found a new kind of stage. The applause was replaced by engine noise and the smell of burning rubber. He did not just dabble in racing. He became good, reportedly winning around 1 out of every 4 races he entered. Racing was not just a thrill. It turned into a real career, and he even worked as a racing instructor, teaching others how to handle speed and risk. Then his path shifted again. Brian moved into the business world, taking jobs at major companies like Apple, FedEx, and AT&T. He climbed the ladder, eventually becoming a vice president of sales. Later, he founded his own tutoring company, Pi Plus LLC, in Seattle, blending business skills with education. This mix of child actor, race car driver, corporate executive, and entrepreneur made his story one of the strangest and most impressive of any Partridge child. Jeremy Gelbwax. Jeremy Gelbwax, the original Chris Partridge, had one of the shortest but most talked about journeys on the Partridge family. Born on May 22, 1961, in Los Angeles, he stepped into a major television role at just 9 years old. When the show began in 1970, he was the youngest member of the main cast, a small boy surrounded by cameras, music, and sudden fame. During that first season, he appeared in 25 episodes. To viewers at home, he seemed like any other child star, drumming along and smiling in the family band. Then, by the summer of 1971, he was gone. When the second season began, another face, Brian Forster's, was sitting behind the drums. For years, people accepted the official explanation. The story was that Jeremy's family had moved away from Los Angeles because his father's job required a transfer to West Virginia. That sounded simple and clean, like a standard family decision. Later, the truth that leaked out from cast interviews painted a more complicated picture. David Cassidy mentioned that Jeremy had a personality conflict with almost everyone on set, from cast members to producers. He said that Jeremy did not get along with him or Danny Bonaduce, and that the tension never really eased. Shirley Jones added her own memories in a 2005 interview. She said Jeremy was not happy doing the show at all, and that his parents were the ones who wanted him there. According to her, his mother eventually requested that he be released from his contract, and the studio agreed. The move out of Los Angeles might have happened, but the emotional move away from the show started long before packing boxes came out. Once Jeremy left the Partridge family, he did something very rare in Hollywood. He walked away and never came back. There were no comeback auditions, no spin-offs, no later guest appearances. Instead, he turned his attention to school. He studied chemistry and computer science at the University of California, Berkeley, building a new identity in the world of labs and code instead of cameras and scripts. After that, he entered the business program at Columbia University, adding another layer of training to his life. Rick Seagull. Rick Seagull might be one of the most surprising names connected to the Partridge family. because his path was built on music, family, and then a complete shift into a world far from scripts and stage lights. Born on March 10, 1969, in Plainview, New York, he entered the show when he was barely old enough to understand what a camera crew really did. He joined the series as Ricky Stevens during the later part of its run, when the producers wanted a fresh young face to add new energy. At just 4 years old, he was cast as the cute new kid after David Cassidy began focusing more and more on his rising music career. Rick appeared in 10 episodes, stealing small moments in scenes where older actors carried most of the story. Around the time his work on the show ended, his family moved to Nashville, Tennessee in 1973, closing one brief but intense chapter of his childhood. What makes his background so interesting is that entertainment was already in his blood. His father, Rick Seagull II, co-founded a psychedelic pop group called the Smubs. They released an album titled This Is the End of the Night in 1969, the same year Rick was born. Music and performance were part of the family structure. Rick performed with his parents in a group called Family Portrait, turning their household into a small traveling act. While he was still on the Partridge family, he recorded an album called Ricky Seagull and the Seagulls with Bell Records. It did not become a huge hit, but it showed how heavily his early years leaned into singing and performing. Then, like a light slowly dimming, his public image faded. Instead of clinging to child stardom, Rick Seagull shifted his focus. As he grew older, he walked away from acting and music as his main work and entered the world of business. Over time, he built a serious career in sales and business development. He took on several major roles, eventually working as director of law enforcement sales at Safariland, a company known for tactical gear used by police and military. Before that, he held high-level positions at companies like Robert Bosch Tool Corporation and Crayola, managing teams responsible for tens of millions of dollars in revenue. Gary Dubin, known to many viewers as Punky Lazar, Danny Partridge's quirky best friend, lived a life that bounced between early charm, unexpected turns, and a final chapter filled with struggle. Born on May 5, 1959, in Los Angeles, he stepped into acting at just 7 years old. In 1966, he made his first television appearance on Family Affair, a small role that hinted at something bigger coming his way. That something arrived when he joined the Partridge family. From 1971 to 1974, he appeared as Punky Lazar, the kid who always seemed ready for trouble and fun, matching Danny's energy with his own brand of mischief. Millions of viewers saw his face and heard his voice. But there was another corner of his career that many did not recognize. In 1970, he voiced Toulouse, the pampered kitten in Disney's animated classic, The Aristocats. That role brought him a separate wave of fame in the voice acting world, giving him a permanent seat in the childhood memories of people who grew up with that film. As he moved into his late teens, Gary's path took a darker turn on screen. In 1978, he played Eddie Marchand in Jaws 2, one of the young characters who meets a brutal end at the teeth of the shark. His on-screen death became a memorable moment for fans of the film, a sharp break from the playful tone of his earlier roles. He kept working over the years, showing up on shows like Beverly Hills 90210 and The District, but the work did not always come steadily, and life off-camera grew more complicated. At some point, Gary decided to reach for a completely different kind of career. He went into law and tried to build a new identity in courtrooms instead of studios. But this chapter did not end the way he might have hoped. He lost a major malpractice case and was disbarred. He fought the decision, appealing all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. But the court refused to hear his case. That failure closed the door on a second profession and added another layer of disappointment to his story.